Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining so very promptly. We're going to wait about 60 more seconds for more attendees to log in. So sit back, relax, have a sip of water or coffee, and we'll kick things off shortly. And we are seeing some more attendees come in right now. For those of you who just came on, we're going to wait about 30 more seconds to start. So please sit back, relax, and we'll get things kicked off soon. Okay, greetings everyone. Thanks so much for joining the webinar, the third in our Plan and Track series, the first being on marketing campaign effectiveness, the second on dynamic segmentation, led by the head of our client service team, Charlie Taylor. Today we'll be focusing on connecting your custom data to our syndicated tools and the power that it can offer. My name's Justin and I'm the head of YouGov's West Coast Data Products team, broadcasting live from San Francisco. Good morning to all you West Coasters. I'm joined by my colleague, Alice Carey, Associate Director from our Data Services team, who sits in our Manhattan office. Good afternoon to all you East Coasters. And to the folks in the UK who are taking time out of their Friday evening to sit in, good evening and happy almost weekend. We really appreciate that you've joined so promptly. We'll be starting in a few moments, but before we kick things off, I wanted to run through some very quick housekeeping. First, all attendees are currently set on mute to avoid any background noise. Since we've been so rude and put you on silent, we've activated the questions panel on the right-hand side of your screen, where you can submit any questions you have throughout the presentation. We will be answering them at the end, but again, encourage you to submit throughout. This probably need not be said, but this is a client-wide webinar, so please avoid asking any questions that are sensitive to your business. In those cases, please follow up with your client service person after the call. Before we dive in, I'd also like to note that we're recording this webinar and each of you will get a copy of the recording early next week in a follow-up email. All right, now I think we have almost everyone in, so let's begin. So thank you all again. This is the third in our 28 series and could very well be the last webinar in our 2018 series. Today we'll be talking about the value of connecting your custom data, no matter how much or how little of it there is, to our syndicated data. So here's our agenda for today. We hope you're all familiar with Plan and Track, but we'll give you a quick recap on that. I'll then kick it to Alice Carey, who will speak in greater depth about our data services team, who plays a vital role in programming and launching your custom questions. She'll speak to what her team does and then specifically as to what a Recontact survey means. She'll then hand it back to me to discuss what happens when your custom data is connected to our syndicated data. I'll talk about the value proposition itself and then dive into some amazing client case studies, which will really bring this to life. We'll then recap the session and answer any questions you may have, and then we'll let the UK folks get on with their weekend. So YouGov Plan and Track, a super brief overview. This slide summarizes our Plan and Track framework at YouGov. On this webinar, everyone is already a subscriber to our services, therefore you may have been exposed to this slide once or twice or 10 times. So if you had, here comes number 11. Our syndicated data tools rely on survey modules that are connected each and every day amongst our 2 million panelists. Each study is fielded amongst a nationally representative panel. Moving from the left to the right, I'll start with our Profiles tool as an example. Profiles is comprised of 300,000 plus respondents and encompasses 290,000 variables. This data can be used to identify almost any audience you can conceive. So quite literally, the identify phase enables you to establish the segment you want to use as your target group, whether it be purchase considerers of a particular brand or your core target audience. Then we can run data points against that audience to describe them in greater detail. Their likes, dislikes, attitudes, psychographics, or brand preferences. Then we can use the wealth of variables to target that audience. We can understand the most effective ways to reach them by looking at their media profile, so their TV viewership, social network membership, apps used, and so on. Typically after the target phase comes the execute phase, which is a combination of us and you. So you're the ones to put together your plan of action, but we're here to help. So aside from the talented client service team, we also have our programmatic offering, which can be used to execute digital media buys. On the far right-hand side, we see measure and evaluate. So after we've employed our strategy, we can look to see how effective it was. Through Brand Index, which is our flagship daily brand tracking tool, we're currently asking 16 unique measures to our panel every day about 1,700 brands. So we can use Brand Index to see if we've reached our core target by measuring the daily trends for ad awareness, impression, or consideration, and then use that data to evaluate our strategy. I will now kick it over to my fantastic colleague, Alice Carey from Data Services, who will explain her team's role in the process of connecting your custom results to our syndicated data. As a reminder, please feel free to submit questions as we go through the deck.
Thanks, Justin. So Justin's talked to you very briefly about our syndicated data products. I'm from the Data Services team, and you can think of us as your first point of call for any ad hoc custom research needs. So you might hear us being referred to as the Omnibus team. Oh. Sorry. That is because whilst it's not the only thing we do, it is our bread and butter product. So it's what we're kind of most known for. And I'm going to start off just by talking you through what an omnibus is. And it's not actually a bus as it describes here. So it is something that everybody can use. It's a multi-client survey whereby each client buys space or questions, and we compile them into one survey, which is sent out to our panelists. It runs every single day, and it goes to a nationally representative sample of 1,000 adults. The fieldwork time is only 24 hours, so it's a really quick means to get your results. We also have a number of specialty omnibuses. Like the national omnibus, they are designed to be used by multiple clients. So again, they have that set sample, but these just allow you to tap into some more niche populations. So whether it's a B2B audience that you're looking for, whether you want to look at those millennials or homeowners, or if it's more geographical through our city bus, which targets DMAs. So we also have our field and tab services. So this is where things can get really interesting, and the audiences are more defined by you. So it might be something like primary grocery shoppers or cyclists. We can use our panel of over 2 million adults to really target niche audiences. I mean, you've seen in profiles that there's 290,000 different variables. You might have created your own custom audiences in the tool. Field and tab is a means to speak to those people and ask them exactly what you want to know. So how do Justin's team and my team work together? This is kind of the meat of the webinar here. So we want to talk to you about Profiles Recontact surveys. To start with, what is a Profiles Recontact survey? It's very simple. We are pretty much recontacting profiles panelists with your custom questions. We then upload your custom questions into the profiles tool, into a custom data set, and you're able to connect those questions with the hundreds of thousands of other variables out there. Now, running a Profiles Recontact really is very simple, and you have both my team and Justin's team on hand to help you at all times. So we might start by choosing an audience. So a recontact can be conducted amongst any of the 3 products that I've just talked to you about. So it might be a nationally representative sample here, or it might be looking at former customers of your brand. We'll then help you develop the questions. So we'll be looking at the profiles database to see, what we've already got on those people and deciding where we need to fill those gaps and really answer your custom research needs. The Profiles Recontact survey goes out to people from the most recent profiles database, and the fieldwork time is generally very quick. So we can have your results into profiles in as little as 3 business days. For some of the more custom audiences, that is a bit longer, but generally we're looking at about 7 days for you to have all of your answers. So as I said, one of the main advantages of a Profiles Recontact is being able to upload it into our profiles tool. And I'm going to hand back over to Justin, who is going to talk you through that a bit more.
Okay, thank you, Alice. All right, so now we're going to go into unlocking the insights. So what can you uncover after your custom data is connected? So here's the value proposition. Connectivity really goes hand in hand with volume, which is the bullet right beneath it. So we're a tech-savvy firm. We're able to connect your results to the, as Alice mentioned, 290,000 plus variables we're already collecting on our respondents. With that tech savviness comes speed, our third bullet. Just this week, our data services team was able to field and upload a client's custom results to profiles in as little as 3 days. That's an amazing turnaround for getting rapid answers to your questions. Flexibility speaks to how nimble we are in reaching extremely niche populations. Alice once mentioned to me that we were targeting dog owners in Wisconsin as a group. So whether it be fish owners in Philadelphia or respondents who own a Pixel phone, we can speak to them for you. And then the state-of-the-art UI, here our second to last bullet. Not all of our clients have had the luxury of being able to mine their custom data within a user interface. More often than not, these results come via a large paper tab book in PDF or Excel form. So we offer more transparency. We invite you to work with the data in our Crunch platform, which Profiles runs on and YouGov owns and operates. We'll upload your results in a custom square, meaning that only users with an email address from your organization can access it. Then finally, the icing on the cake, client service support. We have a dedicated team of consultants who are here to support you from start to finish, whether it be Alice's team to aid in questionnaire design and launch, to my team, client services, for guidance when mining the data in profiles, or even in-depth analysis and deliverables. So unlocking the YouGov database, moving on here. We're going to go through these modules in greater detail during the next section. So this spider graphic really doesn't do us justice, but it can give you an idea of what you can connect your custom data to without having to field questions for any of these particular modules, whether it be demographics, media consumption, consumer behaviors, attitudes, hobbies, interests, brand consumption. You can connect all of that data. 290,000 plus variables. Okay, on to the case studies, the good stuff. So here in this section, we have 3 examples, each connecting a custom group to a different core variable module in profiles. The first case study we're going to go through is going to show how one of the world's most popular and largest retailers were able to connect their custom attributes to our brand consumption module. Since we ask our panelists questions every day, YouGov already knows the brand preferences of its respondents. And by the way, each profile's data set is cut by responses from the past year, so this data is always fresh. So in our first example, all the client had to do was field a Recontact survey, and then we were able to connect the results in profiles. The findings are really cool, and I'm going to share them shortly. The second example is going to show how one of the world's most prominent social media networks fielded their typing tool against our panel explicitly to connect their segment data to our media variables. We then arm their agency with a wealth of information which they use to inform their media plan. The third and final example will show how one of the world's largest telecom providers connected their custom results to profiles specifically with the purpose of learning more about their psychographics, which is a real differentiator for profiles. So essentially they were targeting a group for an upcoming promotion, but knew nothing about them, and we were able to shine a light on who this audience was in an extremely fast manner. Okay, case study number 1. So again, this is one of the world's most prominent retailers. We'll call it Retailer X. And they ran a Recontact survey to determine the attributes that consumers most associated with its brand. So whether it be fun or cool or reliable, so on and so forth. You can see some of those attributes at the bottom. Normally, when doing this kind of work, most of the time, you're simply checking to see if you rate ahead of your competitors on key attributes, such as fashionable, and then tracking it over time. However, we were able to further examine each of these audiences who rated the retailer for cool or fun or reliable and illuminate how important these groups actually were. So when you look at the bubble chart below, this actually represents, so each bubble actually represents the number of people who rated the brand for that particular attribute. So you could think of each bubble as being comprised of hundreds of tiny respondents. We then ran 2 key brand index measures against those target groups. So the first, purchase intent, which is on the y-axis. So did this group show willingness to actually purchase from your brand? Number 2, which is likelihood to purchase clothing, which is on our x-axis. So even if this group indicated that they were likely to purchase from your brand, which is on the y-axis, are these people actually in the market to buy clothes? Examining the bubble chart, you can see that the audience who rated the brand as cool placed number 2 on purchase intent for Retailer X, and were 3rd most likely to be in the market to buy clothing. So if you draw those lines in red, from the y-axis to the cool bubble, from the x-axis to the cool bubble, you can see how highly it rates. So now that we know that it pays to be cool, quite literally, we're able to dive into this audience to learn more about who they were demographically, psychographically, and even how to target them from a media standpoint. So this point is to show how connecting the data can really reveal powerful insights that you may have never known. Case study number 2. Here we're going to talk about one of the world's most prominent social networks. Again, fielding their typing tool against the profiles panel is Recontact, specifically to arm their agency with a wealth of insights to inform their media plan. In this example, the core target audience, which we'll call influencers, significantly over-indexed on variables below. So TV viewership, you can see there's some HBO shows there, Game of Thrones, Silicon Valley, Westworld. We have a TV survey that's running daily, asking our respondents what they watched last night. Apps used. So aside from the obvious, which apps did they actually over-index on? We'll call that a z-score in profiles. So when you sort the data by z-score, you can see that they over-indexed on Starbucks, Spotify, Dropbox, Waze, Shazam. So you can start to infer things by looking at these variables about this particular group's demographics, and then the websites that they're visiting. So potentially they could be younger, maybe they're a little bit more affluent, they're up to date with the news, they're looking at BuzzFeed, but they're still deal hunters on Living Social, and then using PayPal and looking at the Victoria's Secret and Under Armour websites for shopping. And this data was really, really impactful for all of the segments we looked at in informing their media plan. And on to case study number 3, major telecom brand. So this is the example, the first example where we didn't field against a nationally representative audience, like we did in the first and the second. In this instance, Alice's team launched a survey against a group that this major telecom provider was targeting for their next promotion. So not only was the data from the custom survey extremely valuable to them, but they intentionally didn't have to field any psychographic variables within that custom survey because they explicitly wanted to use profiles to analyze this audience's psychographics in greater detail. So Profiles was able to shine a light, as I mentioned earlier, on who these people were, which it can do with really any audience, giving the client a really clear understanding of who they were trying to reach. Just like on the last slide, you can probably infer some things about this audience's demographics by looking at the variables below. On the bottom left-hand side of the screen, this first group of variables shows a group of positive traits, which is unprompted. It's actually an open-ended question where we ask our panelists, if your friend could say up to 6 things about you that were positive, what would they say? And here you can see that the target group significantly over-indexed on being smart and kind. Definitely a group of people that sounds very nice. The second grouping of variables on the bottom right-hand side of your screen went more into depth on their attitudes. What's interesting here is that while they agreed on the top row that companies should be able to express their opinion or how they feel on a particular topic, if you go down to the third row, if that brand actually holds a view that they disagree with, it might prevent them from buying from that particular brand. So we actually have other variables such as issues cared about, causes cared about, which could help our client further examine the causes and messages that might resonate best with this audience. So to recap, and then we're going to take some questions. So the value proposition, we spoke about connectivity, and that's everything for us. And it goes hand in hand with volume. So being able to connect your custom data to the 290,000 variables, to the variables and things that we already know about this audience. Speed, another huge differentiator. Being able to field, upload results, get immediate answers to your questions. Flexibility, we can speak to really niche populations. Dog owners in Wisconsin, purchasers of your brand, responding to an iPhone. State-of-the-art UI. So when you're fielding custom results, this gives you transparency into the data. It allows you to work with it in greater detail, allows you to get on the phone with your client services representative over a screen share, start analyzing this data immediately and connecting it to everything else that we know about these particular respondents. And then again, I think across all of YouGov, what we pride ourselves on is our client servicing. So on-call support, whether it's Alice's team to help with questionnaire aid and design, to my team to really help you put deliverables together, address your needs, talk about projects. We are here for you. So we're now ready to get into the question portion with about 8 minutes left. So that'll give us a good amount of time to tackle anything, and we can start. So let me open up the questions pane on my computer and see what we have. All right, Alice, I think the one I see could be for you. Are there extra costs associated with connecting the custom data?
The answer to that is no. So we would charge the same to a profiles client as someone who is coming to run a custom study with us regardless. The extra value is where we can upload it to the profiles database, and it means that you get so much more for your money.
Okay, I'm gonna keep reading some questions out. I'll target them all at you. Let's see. Can I survey any audience from profiles as a recontact? So Alice, yes, we could probably both answer that one.
Yeah, so we can reach practically any audience that you've seen in profiles. If there is a particular project or a particular audience that you've got in mind, do shoot us an email and we can look into it further. We can discuss feasibility with you.
And you can also work with the client services team as well. So if there are particular audiences that you'd like to speak with or that you think that you'd like to interview, work with your client services rep. They can help you get in touch with our Omnibus team, but also really recommend the right audiences for that particular study. Alice, do you see any?
I've got one for you here.
Yep.
So we've got one that says, what kind of analysis do I get with a Profiles Recontact survey?
Okay, so this is a good question. So the first question asked if there were extra costs associated with connecting the custom data, and that answer was no. So that's a huge differentiator for us. A huge differentiator for us too is that we don't have extra charges associated with putting analysis and deliverables together. So we hope that when you are connecting your custom data, it's kind of an ongoing exploration. Ideally, it starts with your client services person or the team that you work with. So get on the phone with them. We'll start mining the results in the tool, and then you can work with that particular client services person to agree to a report structure or cadence. But I really think that the first step is to analyze the data and profiles. In the retailer example from earlier, we didn't even know that that insight existed until we connected their custom results to our brand consumption data. So a lot of times the value in connecting custom to syndicated can't even be seen until you start connecting it. In the third example, we did specifically field that survey because we knew we wanted to connect the variables to our psychographic, or the custom data to our psychographic variables. So there are times where you're, or for segmentation, for example, where you're going to really know that you're fielding this particular custom study with the sole intent of connecting it. But even if that isn't the sole intent and it was just a custom survey that you were running, since there are no costs associated with uploading it to profiles, we would still recommend that you do it. Because you can really work with your client services team to figure out things about these audiences that you maybe never knew, illuminate a lot of great insights, and I think that's of great value. Alice, do you want me to read one question?
Yep, I think we've got time for one more.
There's a few more questions, so I think we have a couple. Let's go through one real quick. There's two that go hand in hand. One, is there a limit to the number of custom questions I can run with YouGov?
No, there's not. So we'd work closely with you on developing the questionnaire. I said no, but obviously if something's getting really long, then we'd advise you to think about respondent experience, and we can work with you on, really looking at what's most important to be asking and how we can look to just reduce that a little bit.
There's another one that goes hand in hand with it, which it's what is the typical sample size for custom audiences?
So this really varies.
I don't think,
it really varies depending on who you're looking to reach. I think generally within the profiles tool, we want to have at least 300 just to make sure that we've got the coverage on the variables, and you can really get granular with that.
The last question. No, there's one more, which is just, can I buy off of any custom audience I create, like digitally? And the answer to that is yes. I think I mentioned earlier that programmatic could be a future webinar for us. So in the meantime, connect with your client services person, and they can talk to you more about the ability to buy digitally off of any custom audience that you're fielding against. So with a minute left, I think we can let everybody off. But as a reminder, we should be following up with a copy of this recording early next week in a follow-up email. We really appreciate that everybody was able to join, and have a great weekend. And thank you, Alice.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.